Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Bootcamp Blueprint, the place where personal trainers go to grow their bootcamp and social media. I'm super excited because we've got an overseas guest on this week, Carl Hammington from New Zealand. Now, Carl is the founder of Best Me and Health Fit Collective. He's a functional movement coach and play advocate. He's a PT mentor and a FitX presenter with over 15 years experience in the industry. He's a podcast host. You can find him on Best Me Radio. He's got all sorts of qualifications there. I'm just going to read out your main ones here, Carl. Otherwise, we'd be the whole podcast reading out all your qualifications. But he does have a bachelor's degree in sport and exercise, majoring in exercise prescription, and a diploma in exercise science. And he actually had his name on the Dean's list, which is really, really cool. But anyways, without further ado, let me introduce the one and only Mr. Carl Hammington. Carl, how are you?
Thank you very much for that epic intro, Jono. And very flattered.
That you wrote yourself, by the way. I just copied that website.
I know. I reckon I could have glossed that up even more, but I think.
Honestly, though, he did have more. I had to delete half of it because I was like, I'm going to be here all day. Carl, I like to start all these podcasts off with a quote or mantra that inspires you or fires you up. Have you got one for us?
Yeah. So for me, it's never stop playing. So to me, you can find play in every element of life if you want to. It can be the way that you communicate with people. It can be your mindset, or it can be physical as well. So find those opportunities for play.
Love that
Simple.
So much. Love that. And I agree so much with that. Like, I can't see a disadvantage to it, right? Like, why would you not want to make something more fun? I can't see a reason, but
I totally agree.
Anyways, on that note, it should be a fun podcast. What I'd like to start with, Carl, is if you could tell my listeners a little bit about yourself. Like, we've got that long bio there, but what is it that you actually do and how did you get to that point? If you could give us the breakdown there. If it's a long story, that's fine. We can stop along the way and give little pointers, but just let us know.
Yeah, I do. I get a little bit sidetracked sometimes, so feel free to rein me in. But it might be easier to start with, how I got to this point to start. So, I guess what brought me into the realm of play and functional movement is I've been through quite a journey, like everyone has in life. And I started off like every Kiwi kid, very active in the backyard as often as possible, around the neighborhood, finding any opportunity to get out and play. And then I got into, competitive sport, which is great. And, movement became a little bit more serious and a little bit more structured. I started doing well in rugby in particular. And, as I got a little bit older, I started studying exercise at school. And then I went to university and I started to make rep teams in rugby. And then just around that same time, I got into weight training in the gym. And so I started to learn that, this movement is for this muscle group and whatever else. But I think I perfectly set myself up for it's called the unhappy triad, which is an ACL, MCL rupture and a medial meniscus tear. So that ended my rugby career at that stage, which actually led me further into the gym. And I started, exercising a little bit more, lifting more weights. And I had a trainer that came up to me and he said, "Hey, look, you've got quite a good physique. You should have got bodybuilding." And I thought, okay, well, I think I was probably searching for a little bit more achievement in the physical realm. And I took up bodybuilding and I did quite well. I won a couple of national titles and I came across the ditch and I did some international competitions. But what I noticed was one thing, I was starting to get sore and injured, and it wasn't through sport. I wasn't even challenging myself in a three-dimensional way. I tore my labrum in my left shoulder. I started to get some lower back issues, some knee issues, some tendinopathies. And also that led me to not be able to do the things I really loved doing. So I couldn't trust my body in any environment like I used to be able to. So I couldn't go out and play touch footy. I couldn't, rough and tumble with my mates. I couldn't climb a hill. Without feeling like I could potentially do some damage. And I guess on the mental side, I started identifying with, the muscly guy with dreadlocks at the time as well. So I had a bit of an identity challenge and crisis. I was like, well, I'm not that happy. To me, movement is so important in my life. To me, movement is defined as, it's a definition of freedom. If you can't move, I can't do all the things I want to do in life. And that's just my personal philosophy around that anyway. So I started to ask questions. I had a really good mentor at the time as well, which I highly recommend. I think everyone needs at least one mentor. And he sort of came at about that same time. And I started to ask questions around what is the human body designed to do, how we're designed to eat, interact with people, connect, move, and all of the other elements, think. So yeah, that opened up a big old can of worms, as you can imagine. And that led me into, the realm of play through, the work of like Frank Ferencich. I had, I came across some of Ian O'Dwyer's work, which was great. Led to John Polly's work, Dave Leo. And then I came across people like, Daryl Edwards and Mike Fitch, the creator of Primal Play and the creator of Animal Flow. And and it sort of really opened up my eyes. And I guess now, and then actually I started to interview people that lived in the blue zones, the longest living populations in the world. And I started to draw together some, connect some dots, I guess. And I realized that, movement has been for survival. We did a lot of it. That's one element. And the other one was we're designed to be jack of all trades. We're designed to get a lot of diversity in our movement, in our motor patterns, in our stimuli, everything from, what we grip to our physical environment, temperature, surface, things like that as well. And I realized that everything I was doing was very, very linear and very, very isolated, usually in the sagittal plane of motion. Some frontal work, but not much. And then I was wondering why I wasn't functioning well. So yeah, I guess I started to develop my own systems around that time and my own beliefs, and dived into that a little bit more. And now I'm a very strong advocate of three-dimensional movement, and definitely play being a strong part of that as well, for sustainability, for happiness, and also just to make your life a bit better. Like you said before, there's no downsides to being playful.
Love that.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell. But from that, I do have some systems in place now. I call them my foundational movement principles, and there's 6 steps to that. And I don't know if you saw, I spoke on that at the FitX conference, but I believe if you do these 6 things, it can make you move better and can make you a happier human and just a better person in general.
Wow. Amazing. Can I, that's such a good introduction to those 6 things there. Can I please ask that you share these with the listeners, Carl? Is that something you can share?
Definitely.
We're just before, let's talk this up again, because they were 3 very important things there. So what are these 3 things going to do? Let us know again.
6 things actually. So there's 6 of them, but basically it is a 6-step process, and obviously each one of these elements can be a presentation on their own, but I say it helps rehumanize us. So it helps bridge that gap between what we're genetically designed to do and how the current landscape is, basically. And number 1 is actually just addressing and exploring your relationship with movement. So, ask yourself, what does movement mean to you? Does it nourish you? Is it something you do for yourself, or is it something you do for external validation? You just start exploring these ideas and these questions. And from that place, hopefully you'll get a pretty sound answer, and that should start driving actions from there on in.
Awesome. All right. That's the first one. Explore.
Well, number 2 is it's a bit more physical. So in my opinion, it's the most functional movement of them all, and that's breath. So having a proper breathing mechanism and becoming aware of your breath. So there's a few dimensions to this, as you know. So breath, the way that we breathe represents physical structure. So we know now that, for example, our emotional state can influence our physical structure. Our physical structure can influence our breath. So they know now that when your rib angle drops below a certain point, then it literally almost shuts down diaphragmatic action. So your secondary muscles take over. It can create tension through, the neck, the upper back, which can, obviously influence everything. We know that breath itself, diaphragmatic breath, can have a very strong effect on our endocrine system. So, if we're using our diaphragm correctly, it can have a calming effect on the autonomic nervous system. So it can kick us back into that parasympathetic nervous system state, or that rest and digest state. We know that the ratio of breath, so the breath in versus the breath out ratio, can influence that autonomic nervous system function again. So if you take a slightly longer breath out, it'll start to prioritize the parasympathetic nervous system. If you take a longer breath in versus breath out, it'll prioritize the fight and flight mode, or the sympathetic nervous system. So breath is huge. And like I said, you've got to address emotion, posture, and actually just reteaching yourself to breathe correctly through the diaphragm. Yeah,
wow.
It's a big one, I know.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got our first two. What's the third one there, Carl?
Yeah, the third one, actually third and fourth is a bit of a tie. So I have got, this has bumped up the list a little bit recently, since I've spoken to a few experts around this, but it's get down and erecticize.
Okay, love it.
Sounds exciting, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So basically, it's the it's the ability to get down and up off the ground. So, in my opinion, there's no, in terms of global movements, there's not too many movements that are more important than that. And you might have come across some of the research from one of the Brazilian physicians, and he's created the sit to stand test, and that's literally assessing your ability to get down on the ground and stand back up. And there's a whole point system around it, and they've found there's a direct correlation between your ability to perform this test and mortality rates. So it's literally it's a predictor of death and life expectancy.
Wow. And there's different, what can you expand the levels there, Carl? Did you say there's different, you get a score for how quick you do it, or how you...
No. So it starts, you stand in a neutral position, you cross your feet over, so you're standing on the edges of the outside of your feet, you lower yourself to the ground, and then you have to try and stand up again. Your hips have to touch the ground, or your bum has to rest on the ground. Then you have to stand up. If you have to readjust, so if you lose your balance, you have to readjust, you minus a point. Sorry, you start with 10 points, you minus a point, you subtract a point. And if you have to put a limb down, so that could be a hand, an elbow, or even a knee on the ground, each time you do that, you lose a point as well. So you start with 10 points maximum, and you can, obviously lose it right down to 0. And it's quite scary, the correlation, and it's a big study group he used as well. So it's a reasonably strong predictor of general health and longevity.
I never knew that. I can't wait to do it myself, and then just to test it with all my friends and family.
Yeah.
That's so powerful.
Sit to rise test, sorry, I think it's called officially.
Sit to rise. Okay, cool,
Yeah.
cool. All right, there's our third. What's the fourth one, Carl?
Yeah, so actually that one I've got another couple of points. It's just, there's one more point, and that's spend time on the ground, actually. So instead of sitting in a seat, spend time on the ground. Try sitting on the ground for an hour. There's no way you're going to spend an hour sitting in one place. So you're getting a whole series of diverse motor patterns. You're getting some active mobility work, which we know now is more, it's better for your mobility than, just general stretching. And you're getting some nice little endocrine responses, and even some, especially in a deep squat position, some nice digestive side effects. So, deep flat foot squat is one of those positions I emphasize, and that's, it's good for general mobility. It's good for complete elimination. So we know gut health is related to a lot. Just general deep abdominal function as well.
Awesome. Let's touch a little on that. So time on the floor, right? Is there like a particular position or any position on the floor, or what do we mean time on the floor there?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good question. So I've got a series of my favorite positions on the floor. So sounds really bad, eh?
Yeah. These are G-rated podcasts, right?
Of course. Sorry about that. I didn't read the fine print. So, you've got cobbler's position where you're down on one knee, which is great for ankle mobility. You've got the 90-90 stretch position, which you can work some different angles. You've got a straddle position. You've got your deep squat. There's a whole range of positions you can work yourself through. And obviously you can make it more unilateral. You might have one leg out straight, the other leg tucked in. But having that diversity is going to have different benefits, of course. But obviously not getting too caught up in one position for too long.
Yeah, well, that was my next question. So the goal, I'm guessing, is, okay, let's sit on the floor. How am I sitting naturally? Okay, interesting. All right, what if I move like this? Oh, okay, now it's a completely different position and I'm moving in a different way. Is that the benefit to that there?
Definitely. That's a huge part of it. And what I didn't say is around all of these principles, there's a mindfulness element. So actually becoming aware of how you're integrating these principles into your life. And when you're doing it, even bringing awareness to these principles can potentially change your life.
This is an interesting podcast. I can't wait to do this. As soon as we get off this, I'm just going to sit on the ground for an hour.
Get down on the ground, man.
And just see where I am, because I have no idea. I haven't sat on the ground and just mucked around on the ground in different sitting positions since I was a kid, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's where a lot of this came from as well, actually, is observing my children. I've got two beautiful little girls. And honestly, movement-wise, I learned so much from them. That's the way they make sense of the world. They explore physically. It's also their first form of communication. So, movement is just, it's amazing to watch a child move. If you want to learn how to breathe properly, watch a child breathe. Yeah.
I'm not a father myself. I can't wait to be. Well, that's one of the reasons why, just to learn off kids, right?
Oh, it's amazing. It's very inspiring, man. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But all right, cool. Is that it for the third one, or have we got more on this third one still?
Pretty much. There's more layers to each of these, but I don't want me to waffle for too long.
That's my favorite one so far, I think. I can't wait to fiddle around with that. All right, number 4, Carl. What have we got?
It's use your feet like feet.
Okay.
So basically to use your feet like they're designed to be used. So, you would have found at FitX, there was a big theme that came through was actually getting back to using these amazing sensory pieces of technology on the bottom of our bodies the way they're designed to be used. So, we know now we've got, up to about 200,000 proprioceptors, a huge amount of nerves and communication pathways in the bottom of our feet. We've also got about a quarter of the bones in our body. We've got 33 joints in our foot and ankle. These things are designed to move and they're designed to give feedback. They're the way we literally, if you think about the lowest common denominator, what's the purpose of a foot? It's designed to interact with the surface beneath us, which is ancestrally has been the earth. And now we're wrapping them up in these sensory deprivation chambers, these shoes, which doesn't make any sense. So that's a big one. That's why I sort of have these 2 points here are so closely related. I can't prioritize which one's more important than the other, but they're super important.
I love that point. I didn't see where you were. I'm like, what does he mean? Move feet by feet. But then when you got to it, cool. So a lot of barefoot stuff, right?
Barefoot stuff, yeah. Obviously, there's some red flags around that if you've got certain foot conditions and neurological issues. But generally, if you're getting bare feet more, and there's usually a graded exposure and a series of steps you want to go through, your body's going to move better. You're going to be more kinesthetically aware. It's going to upregulate your nervous system. So your fascial system, we know, like a huge amount of our fascial lines tie under our foot. So if we can smarten them up, generally it will smarten up our motor patterns. Once again, it actually has some really interesting tie-ins to our autonomic nervous system function. So it can actually have a grounding effect on our ANS, or a calming effect, a balancing effect. And there's a mechanism in the foot called the windlass mechanism, and that's when your big toe is flexed beyond a certain angle. It basically readies our body for action because it's loaded. And you'll find most shoes, or pretty much every single shoe, has a flexion in the toe. So you're constantly being told that you're ready for action. So you're constantly in that fight and flight mode. The fascia on the bottom of your foot is ready to go. So it's really creating a massive dysfunction. in our foot. We also know, actually, through some of the research of Dr. Tracy Alloway, that barefoot movement in particular can actually increase our working memory, which is actually a stronger predictor of intelligence than IQ testing. Now, so it's actually, yeah. So some of her research is fascinating. One of them was she got people running around a track in bare feet, and the study group, they dropped a whole, they dropped Lego over the track. So obviously, constantly your body and your brain is problem solving consistently. In shoes, not replicable, and even in bare feet without the terrain, not so much. So yeah, being in bare feet, moving on a mixed terrain is very, very useful for our body.
Wow, I love that point because I just love being barefoot myself, right? So, and I love the trend in the fitness industry at the moment. So I'm a huge fan of John Polly's as well, and I love going to his presentations. I can just take my shoes off and not feel bad about it, you know.
Totally,
and he encourages it. He presents with his shoes off.
Yeah, for sure. Dave's the same. Dave Leo, I love it. He always gets people in bare feet. I think he's got a shoes off policy in his gym as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Cool. The dangers of being in shoes outweigh the dangers of not being in shoes. So
wow, I love that. You're not wearing shoes now, are you, Carl?
I have my 5 fingers on currently. So
that was actually what I was going to ask. What's the go on the what's the opinion on the 5 fingers?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think they definitely have their place. I think before you integrate into barefoot work, you really do have to learn how to move in bare feet first. And that can be the danger with a lot of people, is you go from, like I said, the sensory deprivation chambers 24 hours a day to all of a sudden having to, go into complete sensory overload with your feet. And if your feet haven't moved or interacted with surfaces in a long time, then there's a few things that can happen, but it's usually not going to be pretty. So I think they're a useful tool for integrating back into it. But even with that, I had to be careful when I integrated back into it. Like, I'm a sort of throw myself in and, learn as I go person. I actually did it. First time I got them, I wore them for a whole day, and they say wear it for 2 hours maximum for the first day. Chucked them on. I wore them for the entire day, PTing people, so I'm always moving. Went for a little jog around the block, and the next day I could hardly move. So,
oh wow. Okay, so just to our listeners, the 5 fingers, they're those shoes that are sort of not really. They look like a sock, right? That sort of thing there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So they're like a glove for your feet, basically.
Awesome. All right. So they're
generally you get a few points off for aesthetics, but it doesn't worry me.
Oh, what minus points you're saying? They don't look too pretty?
Yeah. Well, I think they're cool. But I
thought you were going the other way. I thought you were saying, yeah, I look so cool in them. And I was like, really?
That's what I'm told. In my opinion, I reckon you give bonus points for them. I think they're great. But
cool. All right. Well, there's our 4, Carl. What's number 5?
So, number 5 is actually find your flavor. So, and that is where play comes in. So, this is more explorative again. So, what's your movement flavor? What's something that brings joy to your life? When was the last time you really enjoyed movement, and what was it? Is there something you've always wanted to do if there hasn't been a joyful experience in your life? Otherwise, it's just time to experiment. So, find your movement flavor, because as soon as you can find the movement that makes you happy, the movement you look forward to, it's something you're going to do for the rest of your life. Well, it's something you're at least going to look forward to doing for the rest of your life. And then once you've found your movement flavor, how do you integrate it into your life? How do you make it become a part of your life as opposed to something external? And that's something that's, with these Blue Zone people that I've spoken to, they're very active people, and they have a functional side to that, which is actually, the laborious side. They've got an active life, but then they've got a playful side as well. They often play in a community. They have sports, regular dance activities that they engage in. And it's just a part of their life. It's not something they think about doing. So one of the guys I interviewed, actually, Marcus Pierce, he spent time living in Icaria. He's done it a few times now, which is a little island of Greece. Looks absolutely stunning, by the way. And, they're one of the longest living populations in the world, the highest concentrations of centurions. And he was saying that him and it was Dr. Damien Christoph, jumped up and they decided to go for a run around the island, and everyone was looking at them like they're crazy. And a guy came up to them and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm just going for a jog." And the guy was like, "Why?"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Actually, yeah, it's probably a really good question. I should probably ask myself."
Wow. I
So
love
yeah,
that.
it's why are you doing this? I just thought it was a really cool point. So yeah, find your flavor, make it part of your life, and maybe what's the best play that you can integrate in, and what do you look forward to? So there's a few questions around that.
I love that. You've given me another task. You just keep giving me these tasks, Carl, to do off the podcast. I've
Yeah.
never thought about looking at what the blue zone people. What's the word?
Yeah, so the blue zones, there's 5 of them, and they're the longest, or they're the highest concentrations of centurions on the planet. So one of them was, Ikaria. I think most people know of Okinawa in Japan. And then there's some Seventh-day Adventists in California. There is a group in Costa Rica. And then there is another one in Spain, off the top of my head, there, that I can't remember that exact name. But I've spoken to some people that have lived in Okinawa and some people that have lived in, spent some time in Ikaria. It's been really insightful.
Well, I mean, it's if you want to be healthy, like go and find the places that there's people that live to 100, right? Like they must be doing something right, especially if it's not just one person, it's a high concentration. What better way to learn? So you've inspired me to look into that. So thank you.
Yeah.
I also,
And it's funny. I've got a bit of a reputation lately of I've got a wide range of clientele. I still train some clients at the gym, and I've got from some of the elite athletes here. I work with New Zealand Ballet and some carded athletes. And on the other side, I'm known as the old fella trainer. So I've got a 97-year-old client and his 93-year-old wife, and
wow.
it's incredible actually. And he came to me with the intention of improving his golfing handicap. So for a start, I was like, congratulations, you're still playing golf. It's incredible. Twice a week. And having a performance goal at 97 is just incredible. So, and then I've got an 87-year-old. So I've got the 97-year-old, the 93-year-old wife, an 87-year-old client, an 80-odd-year-old client, and some people in their 70s. And these people are incredible movers, and they're happy, they're healthy. So I started to really see a correlation between what these people were doing and these long living population, and some definite themes that overlap. And part of it was actually diversity of movement, wide range of movement, social setting, and the biggest part was actually which Leonard told me, the 97-year-old. He said, "Carl, you just got to learn to go with the flow." I was like, wow, how much wisdom is in that,
Yeah.
Just go with the flow.
Well, the other part to that I like is the find your flavor. So I did a session with John Polly JP at FitX. So I went to his presentation, and the basic system was he got you to do a movement, right? Let's say me and you were doing a movement, and you could pick any movement. And he said the most boring you could pick up, right? So people were picking, star jumps and mountain climbers and push-ups and squats, right? And he's like, all right, give me a rating of 0 to 10 on how fun that is. And, you got some of the best trainers in New Zealand there, right? And they're saying, you just want me to do a star jump, like 1 out of 10? He's like, all right, how can we make it more fun, right? They're like, oh, maybe if we move with the star jump. All right, cool. Let's do a star jump, and now let's move with it. Now what is it? Oh, now it's probably a 3, right? It's not ideal, but it's better. Okay. JP's like, how can we make it more fun? They're like, maybe if there are a few other people doing it with us. He's all right, let's get 3 or 4 people all doing it, moving it together. All of a sudden, you've now got, 4 or 5 people doing star jumps together, moving. What is it now? Probably a 5. I wouldn't say it's super fun, but I can probably do it okay, right? He's all right, what can we do to get, and it kept going on. And by the end of it, it ended up being a game of bum tag with star jumps, right? So you had a whole group of people in a small group. I love that. It's so good. Someone was in, right? And they had to try and tag someone else, and that person was in, and everyone in there then said it was a 10, right? So I think there's a few things going on, but like what I liked about that was it was the find your flavor where you got to pick, right? The person doing it got to pick. It wasn't a trainer saying, hey, this is a fun exercise. You have to do it because it's fun. Like, because it's different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So
100%. I like that. I really like that.
And
Yeah,
you know
it's
what?
nice.
It's a good principle. And
Yeah.
hey, it was so much fun because we were just playing
Yeah.
for an hour. Then we just did it
That's
with
the
different
one.
exercises, and it was the quickest session ever, right?
Yeah, for sure, man. I totally agree. Yeah. And there's an interesting thing there. And I picked this up through with Daryl Edwards, actually. And he said, play, often people think of it in terms of it's quite airy fairy. It doesn't have a purpose. He said, try telling that to a kid that's playing the lava game. Play can have a purpose. So play doesn't mean it's easy. Like, for me, play is sometimes I try and climb a tree. I'll get to the top of the tree. That's bloody hard work. And you can see, I've actually created a whole lot out. We're lucky enough to be in a really amazing location, and I call it the urban playground. So I've got a whole series of measurable testing systems outside in a play environment, so we can test these things and see a measurable progression. So play can also be, a really challenging task. It doesn't need me.
Well, I'm a huge fan of fitness games there, Carl, right?
Yeah,
And
awesome.
I'm actually, yeah, to be honest, I think I need some sort of competition for it to be
Yeah,
fun with me, right? Like,
I'm the
if you
same.
said, go and play, I'm probably going to get bored. But if it was, hey, go and play and try and beat this person, or hey, go and play and try and get to the top of that, or hey, try and play and do this, like if there's some sort of goal, that's what makes it fun to me. So I love that. But hey,
Definitely,
we've,
definitely.
we've got one more point left, I believe, here, Carl. What's number 6?
Yes, and that's the performance layer. So that's where a good trainer or practitioner comes in, and that's just 3Dify it. So you know this is where it gets a little bit more technical. So you're taking the client's wants and their needs, and you're trying to create a sound, scientific, periodized plan based around these and what you find in the assessment, and then put it into a 3D environment. So that's where it all sort of ties together. Like I said, it doesn't need to be loose-ended. These things are quite loose in principle, but you can actually put it into a really structured, scientifically valid and exercise prescription format. So that's where the performance layer goes in, and that's where you look at, okay, what are their goals? What does it require? What are their motor patterns currently? What energetics are they going to need to get involved? What does their life look like to make it realistic for their time frames? That's sort of just bringing it all together. Like I said, that's where we teach systems around how that trainer or that practitioner can integrate these things in and put it into a performance layer.
Love
So,
it.
for example, I
There
still
you go.
train a bodybuilder actually, and my first reaction was, "Oh, I don't really do that sort of thing anymore." And I was like, "Well, that's something he likes and he wants to do." And he's into the 3 sets of 10 style training, which probably isn't the way I train anymore. But I'm playing the long game with him. So I've integrated and shown benefits of putting some 3D work in there. I've got him on the rings. I get him doing some reactivity work. I get him doing a lot of stability work and some other movements. And I sell it to him in terms of just providing some evidence behind it. So, through doing this, we're going to get increased muscle fiber recruitment, you're going to increase your range of motion, which gives you the ability to build more muscle. And also, obviously, you see the confidence side change. So he had a goal of doing a bodybuilding competition, and after quite a few years of training, he hadn't quite got there. And last year, actually, we got him up on stage, and he did incredibly well. And at the end of it, he said to me, he didn't actually find it hard. He found it a really enjoyable process. So we did a lot of work around mindset as well, and actually just enjoying the process as opposed to judging yourself as well. So he did incredibly well, and that's where you can get these principles, sneak them in. If you know it, the content well enough, you can apply it to anything, no matter what the goals are.
Love that.
Yeah. So that's where a bit of that science and creativity come together, I think.
Awesome. Well, hey, Carl, most of our listeners here are boot camp instructors. So they're running their own boot camps, maybe indoor, maybe outdoor, but the common thread is it's exercise going on and it's
Yep.
groups there. I was hoping you could give us maybe 3 quick tips on what these boot camp instructors can do to add fun to their sessions there. If they're currently, I'll just give you a scenario, right? Let's say you've got a boot camp and the trainer's running circuits every session, right? They come in, they do some sort of a 5-minute functional warm-up. They'll run maybe a circuit where there's 10 stations and they do a couple minutes on each station. And most of those exercises are in the sagittal plane. And they do a bit of a stretch at the end to cool down. All right. Now, me, myself, I don't like that style. Everyone's got their own preference, right? But for me, that's just super boring. Could you give a trainer like that maybe 3 tips on what they can do to make that session a bit more fun for the clients, a bit more playful?
Sorry, just cut out for a second there, Jono.
Sorry.
You're back now, though. I missed most of your question.
That's all right. I'll go back and edit this. So let's just say you've got a trainer. They're running a boot camp. Their boot camp basically involves a 5-minute functional warm-up. They then run through a circuit, 10-station circuit. Majority of those exercises, if not all, are in the sagittal plane, and then they do a 5-minute stretch at the end of it. Now, my opinion, that can get a little bit boring, right? What are maybe 3 things that trainer can do to make the session a bit more fun and a bit more playful for the clients?
I can't help but think about the whole process here. I could be a little bit probably over analytical here, but I would actually, to be honest, I'd before I start these things, we do a lot of group training here as well, actually, is gain some feedback beforehand. So ask these questions in a pre-screener just to see what these people are actually going to enjoy. But I can guarantee you there's going to be some fun. Some people really like the hands-on interactive work. Some people absolutely hate it. So it might be worth getting your hands on some of that information beforehand. In my opinion, I like to be safe going into it because I've experimented with some of this stuff and I've got feedback and I've adapted along the way. But going forward, I always ask those questions now, even in terms of a group, because the best form of movement is something that people are going to do often, right? So you want people to be moving and you want it to be an enjoyable experience. So some people are going to enjoy the high five, low five games, the bum tag. Other people might absolutely hate it. So maybe gain some insights as to what that individual enjoys beforehand. And then you could cluster together, get some ideas of your cohort and what your target market is. So it can sometimes help refine that. And then you can sort of tailor suit. In terms of how it could physically manifest, I think an icebreaker game that's reasonably simple is always a good way to start. Usually, this is me with my stuff though, I'll get people in bare feet and I'll have some really simple interactive games to start. So it might be something like some basic warding or some core wall stuff. So you might get people standing on 2 feet to start, hands facing each other, and just gentle sort of offset taps with the ability, the outcome is to try and knock your partner off their feet without being too brutal. Or sticky hands, where you might get people touching fingertips, and then one person's a leader, one person's a follower, and just moving around. It's great 3-dimensional work. It's not high intensity. You're not going to rupture anything or blow a disc. It's just a really nice way to get the energy flowing first thing. And then I would challenge the trainers or the bootcamp instructors to think about how they can 3Dify the current movements. So, for example, like you gave a perfect example before, a squat doesn't have to be just a squat. Like a squat, you can change your foot position, you can change the distance you reach, you can change the driver. What can you do with your other limbs? Can you add some rotation? Can you add a bit more frontal plane work in there? Or can you add an extra stimuli or even a perturbation? So, how can you challenge yourself in terms of the movements that you're doing currently? Because you can add so much more value to your participants' experience there.
Love it. So let's summarize those 3. The first one was the survey or the asking, right? So, hey, we might think it's fun, but if the clients don't think it's fun, then it's no point. So that's the first thing there. The second point is the icebreaker, and I'm a huge fan of that. And it's not even just an exercise thing, right? Like if you go to a meeting or a conference or something, like how much better is it if there's a fun icebreaker at the start, right? And then the third
100%.
point is 3D, the movements. So have a look at your exercise there. Okay, you see a push-up. All right, what can I do to get that push-up in a different plane, right? Or, okay, maybe I keep the push-up as it is, but now the next one I can't also have as a sagittal movement. So I'm going to make that lunge a curtsy lunge or a whatever. I'm going to do a side lunge while swinging a kettlebell. And, what can we do to get it there? So I love those there. Hey, we're coming to the end of the podcast here, Carl. I've got a few questions I like to ask all my guests at the end. Now, you're obviously a huge mentor to other personal trainers out there, especially when it comes to play and functional movement. I know you've dropped a few names along the podcast here, but let's just drop them again at the end here. So if someone's listening and they're like, all right, Carl, I want to learn more about this. Obviously, I'm going to follow you and we'll give your social medias I mentioned in a second. But who do you go to learn things from?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to be exposed to, a few mentors and people I've had a lot of physical contact with. Dave Leo has been one of my initial mentors. He's great.
The Australian, right?
Yeah, he's not Australian. He's a Kiwi. So glad, but he's Australian at the moment. So, I was lucky enough to, when I first started, he was the person I mentioned at the beginning, actually, that was my first mentor around that transition time for me. And he's still doing great work at Kaizen. I love Eno Dwyer's work. I think he's always doing great stuff. He's reinventing himself. I love John Polly for the play. I've got a great team here with Greg Rightford, Mish McCormick, and Theo Bostrovas. I'm really lucky. I think we all inspire each other in certain ways. Really enjoying that environment. But some of the people I guess I've used in some of their material, and I've interviewed them through my podcast. Daryl Edwards, I love his stuff with Primal Play. He's done some amazing work. I love Frank Ferencic and his work there. He's a creator of Exuberant Animal. And he's written multiple books. I do enjoy Mike Fitch's stuff with, his global bodyweight training and his animal flow. He's just a really cool guy, and he understands actually the science behind what he's prescribing as well. I enjoy Paul Check's work still. I think he's a really interesting guy. And some of the things we're seeing become fashionable now, he was talking about, years ago. So I had the privilege of interviewing him recently as well. So just on a different level. Those are some of the people off the top of my head. Dr. Bobby Chima, who's over in Australia as well. He's more on the academic side, but I always enjoy his perspective as well.
Wow, that was the who's who of playing functional movement there. So I love that. Hey, now I want to get to you, Carl. So if someone's listening to this and they're like, look, I like Carl's style here. I want to hear more about him. You are a PT mentor, and I know you've got some programs coming up. So the best place for people to contact you, I've got your socials written here. I'm just going to read them out and make sure that I've got them all correct. So your business is The Best Me. So listening to this, you're probably a podcast listener. So if you want to subscribe to Carl's podcast, it's Best Me Radio. Is that right there, Carl?
Yep. Best Me, one word, radio. Yep.
Awesome. And the Instagram handle is Best Me Community.
That's the one.
Awesome. And then also your facility there in New Zealand is the Health Fit Collective. So the website is healthfitcollective.co.nz. and can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Health Fit Family.
Yeah. Well, Health Fit Collective on Facebook, actually, and Health Fit Family through Instagram.
Let me write that
Sorry.
down. So,
my bad.
Health Fit, because I'm going to put this in the show notes as well. So Health Fit Collective on Facebook, Health Fit Family on Instagram.
That's the one.
Awesome. All right. Well, hey, Carl, that's all we've got time for today. Is there anything I missed? Is there anything I should have asked you that I shouldn't have? Is there anything you want to get off your chest there?
No, I'm quite happy with that. I think we dived into some interesting stuff there, Jono. Just want to take time to thank you, though. I think your work you're doing is just fantastic, and I loved hearing you talk at the event as well. So I just love the way you're bringing the wellness world together, and we're creating a united community. I think it's really important. It's really important to understand that we're all on the same mission. We should be working together. So thank you for what you do.
No, I appreciate that. But hey, I'm going to leave you to it. All right, Carl?
Cheers, Jono.